The Hello Houston. Coming up this hour, we dive into the top stories of the day. A proposed law requiring all public school classrooms in Texas to display the 10 Commandments is advancing to the State House of Representatives. I'm Ernie Manous.
And I'm Celeste Diaz-Sherman. How healthy is Harris County? Well, we'll find out with the interim executive director of Harris County Public Health about their recent health report.
And I'm Frank Billingsley. Plus, it's Cinco de Mayo. We'll talk with Ricardo Molina, co-owner of Molina's Cantina, the oldest family-owned Tex-Mex restaurant in Houston. He'll tell us all about Cinco de Mayo and why we celebrate.
And as Ernie, Frank, and I discuss the top headlines of the day, we want your thoughts, your questions, and your concerns. Give us a call at 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, and by gifts from listeners like you.
President Trump is threatening to implement a 100% tariff on movies produced outside the United States but shown in this country. NPR's Mandalita El Barco reports the president says he wants movies to be made in America.
On social media, Trump wrote that America's movie industry is, quote, dying a very fast death, and that Hollywood is, quote, being devastated by other nations that draw filmmakers and studios away from the U.S. with incentives, something he calls a national security threat. His post did not give any details about his tariff plan, but it appears to be his solution to the fact that many American films and TV shows are produced internationally. Countries like Canada, the UK, and Australia give productions lucrative tax incentives, rebates, and grants. Trump blames California Governor Gavin Newsom for allowing that to happen, but Newsom has already proposed boosting his state's tax incentives. Mandalita Del Barco, NPR News, Los Angeles.
Israel plans to limit the way food and supplies are distributed in Gaza. Israel says it's part of a strategy to expand its military offensive in the Palestinian territory. The United Nations and main aid groups in Gaza are refusing to take part. NPR's Anas Baba in Gaza contributed to this report from NPR's Daniel Estrin in Tel Aviv.
Israel's cabinet approved a new plan to isolate Hamas from the aid system by sending Palestinians to an Israeli-controlled zone in southern Gaza to get food and supplies. In northern Gaza, resident Bassem Shaneura criticized the plan.
Absolute crazy. How we would be going 30 or 40 kilometers to take food parcels. And they told us it's like dry food, not a fresh food, which made us feel like animals, actually.
The UN says the plan violates humanitarian principles by using aid for military aims. Israel has imposed a more than 2-month aid ban on Gaza, fueling hunger. Daniel Estrin, NPR News, Tel Aviv, with Anas Baba in Gaza City.
Hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs stands trial in New York City starting today over allegations that he engaged in decades of abuse against women and others with help from business employees. NPR's Isabella Gomez Sarmiento reports jurors are being selected to weigh the charges against Combs.
He faces charges of sex trafficking. That means forcing or coercing someone to engage in commercial sex acts. Combs also faces charges for transporting people across state lines to participate in commercial sex. And the third charge, racketeering conspiracy, is what ties all of this together. Prosecutors allege that Combs directed his employees to organize and conceal these sex crimes for over a decade, and Combs has pleaded not guilty to all of these charges.
NPR's Isabella Gomez Sarmiento reporting. At last check on Wall Street, the Dow was up more than 100 points at 41,423. This is NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Gabrielle Dawkins. Galveston is reporting the first drowning death of the year. A 49-year-old man from Oregon was pulled from the water near a no-swimming area near a rock jetty. Beach Patrol saw the man struggling but could not reach him in time before he went under. Several people remain hospitalized after a shootout at a family gathering on the southeast side. 15 people were shot, some of them critically, and one person is dead after a gunman opened fire early Sunday morning. HPD Assistant Chief Patricia Cantu says the incident started at a family party.
I believe some of the witnesses are saying they had an uninvited guest. The uninvited guest was asked to leave. He left. As he was leaving, he began shooting in the area. There was return fire from the residents as well.
Shots were still being fired when police arrived on the scene at the 600 block of Cherry Hill Avenue. There were so many people injured that police had to set up a triage center at a nearby parking lot. And a program at the Fort Bend County Juvenile Detention Center is helping kids learn new skills by working with shelter dogs. Aurora Pena, the program's canine leadership assistant, described the program as a form of canine therapy.
Sometimes the kids want to just pet the dog. It's a really good stress reliever. It lowers the cortisol levels and it boosts oxytocin.
Program leaders say it teaches the kids new skills and helps the animals become more adoptable. And in sports, the Rockets were eliminated from the NBA playoffs yesterday. They lost Game 7, 103-89 in its Western Conference matchup against Golden State. Houston struggled again offensively after scoring 131 points in Game 6 of the series. The Warriors are moving on in the playoffs to take on the Minnesota Timberwolves. I'm Gabrielle Dawkins, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include BetterHelp, committed to supporting mental health through therapy and helping clients find balance. Clients are matched with one of 30,000 therapists for online therapy from anywhere at betterhelp.com/public.
Live from the University of Houston, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
And it is Monday.
It's Monday, but we made it.
Happy Monday. Hello, Houston. We made it to Monday. Before we get into all this, I've promised myself I'm going to deliver this information quickly. So here we go. You can watch us on YouTube. It's easy to do. Go to YouTube and look for the Houston Public Media channel, or even easier, go to hellohouston.org and click that big orange bar. Watch us live. See what's going on here. We want you as part of the conversation, so make sure that you give us a call or text us, 713-440-8870, or email us, talk@hellohouston.org. Did I get it all in?
You got it.
There you go. Remember, like, subscribe, ring the bell, all that stuff. And also there's a chat that goes on YouTube, which is always fun to watch. Sometimes we'll slift over and watch it while it's going on.
I'm watching right now.
Frank's watching it right now.
Yep.
But you know what else Frank should be watching? And I know he is. The weather.
I know.
Yes.
Well, it was a nice weekend.
It was beautiful.
Fabulous.
That breeze was amazing.
Yeah.
So what we're getting into now is a flood issue, because these fronts are not going to be going through as quickly as they used to. And so they get hung up and we end up with flood issues. There is a flash flood watch for tomorrow for basically the whole northern part of the state, and it extends all the way down. If you drew a line from Bryan College Station to Beaumont, diagonal line, and went north, that's the flash flood watch area for 3 to 6 inches of rain tomorrow into Wednesday. For us, 1 to 3 in Houston. But when you're kind of drawing lines, so be weather aware and watch for the heavy rains.
The whole country, though, looks like, going up east, it looks like it's going to be rough, too.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
If you're flying that way, be aware.
Right. But hopefully we'll stay somewhat okay here. It always fascinates me, though. It can be a 1 inch, half an inch of rain in Houston. All of a sudden you got flooding.
The rule really is 2 inches of rain in an hour, and then you've got street flooding.
Yeah.
You get to 4 inches of rain in an hour, that comes into the yards. You get 6 inches, that can get into homes.
So basically, be safe out there.
I also think Houstonians just have so much PTSD when we hear flooding.
It starts
When it's raining
absolutely.
and we're just like, oh my gosh.
Trust me
We're
on
not
that.
going out.
Yeah.
Coming up this hour, we're going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff. We'll be talking about the health report that came in about the county,
Yeah.
see how we're doing health-wise. And in case you hadn't noticed, it's Cinco de Mayo.
Hey!
We haven't started celebrating in here, but we will before the hour's over, I can promise. So keep listening for that. But as always, we start with the headlines of the day, and Celeste is going to lead us off.
That's right. Senate Bill 10 is a proposed law that will require all public school classrooms in Texas to display the 10 Commandments. It is now headed to the House. The House Committee on Public Education passed the controversial Senate bill without amendment on Thursday following a pre-dawn hearing earlier this week. The full House could vote on the bill this week, as early as this week. The Ten Commandments verbiage would be the same translation as on the monument outside the Texas Capitol in Austin. State Rep Candy Noble, a Republican from Lucas, Texas, is carrying the bill in the House, argued the Ten Commandments are a foundational document in U.S. history and critical to moral education. One of the bill's fiercest critics is State Rep James Tellerico, a Democrat from Austin, a seminary student, and former public school teacher. He stated, "I worry that these kinds of bills will actually create a new generation of atheists who think our religion is more about power than love." Are you in favor of this bill, or do we need to keep religion away and out of the classroom? Give us a call, 713-440-8870.
So I have the text in front of me of what the actual monument says and what's going to be posted in all the rooms. And there are 2 that are actually laws out of the 10. It's thou shalt not kill, and thou shalt not steal.
That's it.
The rest of them are nice ideas to live by. I mean, if it were a real law not to commit adultery, I'm worried about the current administration and who would be arrested. There's a lot of things in here. Also, there are 12 points on their 10 commandments because the first one starts off with, I am the Lord thy God. And the last one, 11 and 12, are actually the covet thy neighbor's possessions, which is split into 2. So it's you shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. And then the next one is thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife or his manservant or his maidservant or nor his cattle, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. You know, I think it's important people are familiar with the 10 Commandments for what the Republican Party is saying. They are a foundation of our culture in a lot of ways. Mandatorily posting them in every classroom is where I have a problem.
Well, don't forget, thou shalt not bear false witness, which means don't lie.
Right, yeah.
Well, there's a little of that goes on everywhere. So no, you're absolutely right. First, I mean, notwithstanding the separation of church and state has apparently long gone, I think if we want to put something on the walls, just put what Jesus said, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That pretty much covers it.
But once again, I don't want it mandatorily put on the walls.
Well,
I
then
think
again,
it should
how
be
large
taught.
is it going to be? Is it going to cover the whole wall, or is it going to be right there next to the entrance?
When I was a kid in school, we would always have like this month we were looking at something, and so the bulletin board would get covered. So maybe we did do a month of looking at Judeo-Christian history and their texts and things like that. And we would have maybe the 10 Commandments up. We would have quotes of Jesus. But the next month we would look at something else because it's public education. And there are people in this community that are not Jewish or Christian. And I think we need to be aware of that.
You know, I grew up saying Our Father, the Lord's Prayer, and the 23rd Psalm and the 100th Psalm, make a joyful noise to the Lord, and the Pledge of Allegiance. So that was the way I grew up. And it, for good or for bad, I didn't feel like it hurt me or helped me, but maybe so. I still say the Golden Rule covers everything.
I find this bill discriminatory.
Toward Hindus and Buddhists?
Even though I think that the 10 Commandments are an excellent set of guidelines to live your life by.
Oh, really?
If you want the 10 Commandments all over your classroom, you now have $10,000 to send your child to a private school.
Wait until they say to the private school, guess what? You're getting state money, you're going to do what the state does.
Well, the state wants the 10 Commandments in classrooms, and so private schools, some that are parochial or religious, will say we already have them up.
But let's get back to this. Do you really think that have no graven images before me is pertinent?
I think that it obviously doesn't translate directly. However, I do think that the 10 Commandments are, for the most part, guidelines.
So now we're going to have to translate them to today's world.
Yeah.
So
do not take the Lord thy God's name in vain.
In this,
so that and what about honor thy father and mother? Which, depending on the father and mother, I don't think that's great advice. And what about keep the Sabbath day holy? We sell liquor on Sunday. Are we going to go back to the blue laws?
I think that Houston is so diverse, and the 10 Commandments, making it be in a classroom will do more harm than good.
To go back there, but our points 2 and 3 of these 11 or 12 Ten Commandments. Thou shalt not have no other gods before me. Interesting for people who do not worship the Judeo-Christian God. Thou shalt not make to thyself any graven images.
That could be the American dollar. I mean, if you wanted to translate it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain.
Right.
So no more swearing, no more of the GDs, no more of that.
But a lot of these things that we are taught already within the confines.
Which is why putting them on, I don't know how large this is supposed to be, putting them on every wall of a public school seems a little overbearing and, as you say, discriminatory, and they don't work.
In
I'm telling you, what works is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. The golden rule works.
In 2022, there was a bill in Texas that passed that said, in God we trust. If there's a poster that is donated to your school, it is required to be put up. And it's with a state flag. And at my daughter's elementary school, it is there. And sometimes, and y'all know my beliefs, but sometimes when I do walk in there, I feel it's there.
Right. Well, I think I'm very surprised we have not been getting a lot of calls on this week, because I'm sure you have thoughts, feelings, and opinions on it. Let us know. Share them with us. I'm very curious. It's just 3 voices here right now, but we've got a whole community out there of voices. We want to hear yours. 713-440-8870. I'm going to move on to a related story, maybe. Some Catholic leaders and at least one U.S. Catholic group are criticizing President Trump after he posted on social media what appears to be an artificial intelligence-generated image of himself dressed as the Pope. Trump posted the image on his Truth Social account on Friday night, and shortly after it was reposted by the White House on its official X account. The papal conclave to elect the next pope is set to begin on Wednesday. New York State Catholic Conference said of its post on X, quote, "There is nothing clever or funny about this image, Mr. President. We just buried our beloved Pope Francis, and the cardinals are about to enter a solemn conclave to elect a new successor of St. Peter. Do not mock us." What do you think? Give us a call, 713-440-8870. Were you offended by the president's post?
I cannot even fathom. I can't believe that we're even commenting on an AI meme of the President of the United States dressed up as the Pope, who retweeted it from the official put it on Truth, was retweeted and reposted by an official White House account.
You can't believe we're talking about it, or you can't believe it even happened?
Both.
Yeah. I can't believe
both.
that
if it's a joke, it's not funny.
That they assume it's AI generated. I am so scared it's not AI generated, and he had a photo shoot.
Oh, come on.
No. It's definitely AI generated. But, and if it was serious, that's a real issue. But I have no comment.
You know what, though? Before we talk more about it, we did ask for people's opinions on the 10 Commandments at 713-440-8870. We're also curious what you think of President Pope Trump. Give us a call there. But Jam just called us from Friendswood. He's got a thought on the 10 Commandments. Jam, what's on your mind?
Hi. What I want to know is who's going to explain to a grade schooler what adultery is?
Thank you.
And I asked that from personal experience when I made just a mistake, went to confession, none of the 10 Commandments applied, but there was only one I didn't know what it was. And imagine being a priest hearing a 7-year-old say, "I've committed adultery."
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's right up there with "thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife." You got to explain that too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think part of the problem also is that I don't think teachers are supposed to be allowed to comment
right,
on
they're not supposed
what
to
is
talk
adultery.
about that.
Right. So, Jam, great point you bring up. Thank you for sharing with us.
Patricia's from Spring on the same subject. Patricia, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Patricia, share with us what's on your mind.
Yes, I'm from Spring Branch.
Okay.
I feel that the whole this whole bill is in violation of "thou shalt not take God's name in vain." The whole purpose of putting weaponizing religion for what purpose? I think it's for judging people, which is totally against God's word. I think "Thou shalt not lie" is just in a way I'd like them posted, only because there are so many violations. It might straighten people up on school boards and people who are trying to dictate the laws in our schools.
Fair enough.
Patricia, thank you very much for calling. The number 713-440-8870. Marianne is on the line from Upper Kirby. Marianne, what's on your mind?
Hi, thank you for your show. I really enjoy it. The Ten Commandment poster thing. I went to Catholic grammar school, high school,
right,
Catholic college, and I taught in Catholic schools for a number of years. Never did I see a poster of the Ten Commandments ever.
Mm-hmm. Ever. Me too.
It was in your catechism, which of course we all had to memorize, and that was absolutely insane. And the other thing on school choice, my feeling is my parents made a choice to send me with their own money to Catholic schools. I made the very same choice for my children from K to 12. That's what the choice is.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That's where that it doesn't mean that I'm totally against against school choice. And I taught in I taught in Catholic schools and parochial schools. I was an adjunct at Syracuse. The other thing about donating the poster, how about if we donate a book? Does the book then have to remain in the classroom?
It's going to have to remain in the classroom. They're closing the libraries. That was a little joke there. Thank you, Marianne, for your thoughts. On what she's saying, too, I went to a Jesuit university. I am not Catholic, but I went there, and I value that education because they taught us about all world religions. And I think it was just part of my schooling.
Sure.
But it's important to understand how different people of the world celebrate and understand their own world. I think it's important we have religious education folded into public schools. I don't think there's any problem with that. I think when it's mandatory, that's the problem. When it becomes about a singular religion above all else, that's a problem. You need to learn what the world around you has in it, I feel. I see Celeste nodding. She doesn't agree with me there. What do you think?
Religion taught in public schools. You think that's okay? I just want to make sure I understand what you were saying.
I think if it is an overview of religions, talking about how faith systems are built and the way different communities have done it, because I think the human race throughout history, for the most part, have always leaned towards some sort of understanding beyond what they could understand, and that often falls into religion. And I think people need to learn and understand that concept.
Yes, but it has nothing to do with plopping the Ten Commandments on the school
Absolutely.
law. That's totally separate.
That. Celeste, though, what are you thinking?
Well, I just think that in elementary school, there's just, it's
and
very
age
complex.
appropriate.
I think that teachers already are at their max trying to teach reading, writing, math, science, social studies,
rewritten history.
Right. It's already so complex. And then not just that, what are teachers going to feel, comfortable teaching? How do you teach religion if you're not religious, if you don't have any? And now there are some of the biggest religious scholars that were atheist in that they studied that and that was what they looked at.
Right.
But I don't know.
Okay, we have some more folks that do know what they think. So we're going to go back to the phones at 713-440-8870. Anthony, you're up next from Pearland.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to the Ten Commandments being displayed in classrooms if the teachers are also allowed to teach which politician is breaking said Ten Commandments.
Anthony, an interesting twist on this topic. I think I kind of like that.
Yeah, I think you need a long list.
Yeah. Thank you, Anthony. Let's go to Colby. Colby's calling from Katy. Colby, what's on your mind?
A couple things. One, you talked about the Pope Trump.
Yes.
Post. So yesterday he did a Star Wars Day post.
Yes.
Where he compared MS-13 to Sith and compared the lunatic left to the Empire.
Mm-hmm.
But he also posted a photo of himself holding a Sith lightsaber, a red one. So I just thought that was kind of funny. But really what I called about was I find it odd that some folks say we shouldn't have gun-free zones at schools. Criminals will ignore those signs. But we should put the 10 Commandments on the wall because people won't ignore those.
Thank you, Colby. Moving on. That was interesting points there. And also, we do have a president who likes to make his generated pictures of himself.
Well, and I think the Darth Vader thing, the Star Wars thing, was almost like, okay, I'm maybe messed up on the Pope. Let me try to turn the conversation.
A little damage control.
Let me get it lost in the mix.
I just do these memes. I just do them all. No, I didn't mean the Pope. I just do them all.
But you got to be sensitive, though, to the Pope. That's the problem I have there. It's the lack of sensitivity.
Yes,
we're going to wrap
O'Connor.
this up with Deborah from Rice Village in this segment. Deborah, what's on your mind?
Hello.
Hello.
You know, the word moral education really sent a chill up my spine. It smacks of something, I don't know, distinctly un-American. Is that actually mandated in the public school curriculum?
The 10 Commandment posting? Is that what you're asking?
No, the representative in Austin that put this forward, that authored this, she talked about moral education.
Right.
And I really find that frightening.
I'm right there with you. I think that families need to have a certain say in what they teach their children, and schools are teaching you facts and educational
As we said, Candy Noble, the representative, is saying that the 10 Commandments are a foundational document in U.S. history.
And critical to moral education.
That's a little strong, and it's not correct.
Well, we will leave you on that note. We're still interested in what you think. Continue to call, write, text us at 713-440-8870. We'll continue to monitor it and have a funny feeling throughout the course of the show. We'll come back to this topic.
Yeah.
Coming up on Hello Houston, the Harris County Public Health Report is out, and we will look at how our county did by the numbers. Plus, Ricardo Molina, co-owner of Molina's Cantina, will tell us all about Cinco de Mayo. And we are also taking your calls on any of today's topics at 713-440-8870. This is Hello Houston on News 88.7.
It can be hard to stay informed about what's happening in our city, our state, and across the country. That's why Houston Public Media makes it easier.
Everything you hear on News 88.7 is powered by you, not advertisers. 80% of our funding comes from our Houston community.
That's what makes public media different. It's community funded and always here for you when you need it.
Join that community now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
Hi, I'm Craig Cohen, the host of Houston Matters. Join me weekday mornings at 9 or at your leisure on your podcast feed for your daily guide to the people, places, issues, and ideas that define Greater Houston. From politics to the economy, energy to the environment, healthcare to education to transportation and beyond. If it matters to Houston, it matters to us. Check us out wherever you get your podcasts or live on the air weekdays at 9 a.m. right here on News 88.7.
Support comes from Gen Pro, a Houston-based home generator service providing power to homes during unexpected outages, helping with connectivity and productivity. More information is available at genpro.com.
Houston Public Media brings to you PBS World, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on TV 8.6. Experience the personal connection behind the headlines with programming devoted to telling stories that humanize complex issues. PBS World helps us understand the movements, conflicts, and cultures that connect us all. PBS World on TV 8.6 and online at houstonpublicmedia.org.
Support comes from Artec House, Houston's home for digital art and immersive experiences, located in the Heights. A journey across time and space in 26,000 square feet of interactive installations. Tickets at artechhouse.com.
And now back to Hello Houston. Call now, 713-440-8870, or email us at talk@hellohouston.org to get your comment in on today's topics. Here's Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
We are still getting a lot of response to the 10 Commandments. So if you've got a thought, an opinion on it, Jim just gave you the numbers. I'll give them to you again, 713-440-8870 that you can call or text or email us your thought, talk@hellohouston.org. And we will come back to this topic a little later in the show. We also talked about what we're calling President Pope and that AI-generated item that our president posted over the weekend of him dressed as the Pope. And we have a call on the line. It is Kathy from Sugarland with her thoughts on that. Kathy, talk to me.
I am just so outraged by that image. I think it's completely blasphemous. It's so disrespectful. To take at this time of mourning, especially for people, millions of people around the world, as they're grieving this loss, for him to try to put himself on that level and on that pedestal, given that, number one, Pope Francis was not a fan of him, and the Trump administration pretty much has made an effort to eliminate or to endanger every single value that Pope Francis spoke about. It's just completely inappropriate. And then for him to have the image in the first place was not okay. For the White House official account to retweet it as if it's something official, as if it's something that's from the government itself, that's government sponsored, is just a whole different level of inappropriate.
I agree with you, Kathy. If anyone else had done this, Kathy, I think they would be canceled.
It's so right. Imagine, God forbid, if President Obama had done this, or even President Biden, or really any other Republican president had done that. Nobody would have been okay with this.
Yeah. There seems to be a lack of sensitivity at this level. And, there can be jokes, there can be playfulness, but you have to know what you're joking and playing around with. And the passing of a pope, a religious leader of a huge group of people in this, not only in our country, but across the globe, really bad taste.
And to sit front and center at the man's funeral.
Yeah.
With his wife, and then to do this, it's like, weren't you there?
Kathy, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us today. Remember, we are interested in what you think. Give us a call or text us, 713-440-8870, or again, the email talk@hellohouston.org.
Every year, Harris County Public Health, which is the county's health department, publishes a report detailing the impact the department has had on its residents. Last month, the 2024 report was released. It highlights several stats about public health in our county. This report has a lot of data on how Harris County is doing from almost every aspect of how the county looks from a health and environmental perspective. With us now to tell us more about the report, we welcome Leah Barton, the Interim Executive Director of Harris County Public Health. Leah, good morning and welcome to Hello Houston.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So last year, or I guess in 2023, Harris County Public Health published its 5-year plan, which outlined your goals and objectives and your program initiatives. And there were 3 broad categories: improve community health, remove health disparities, and achieve optimal health for all. Here we are. Now you have a full year to look at and measure. How has the plan progressed, and how do we look in 2024?
Yeah, we are absolutely making progress against those goals. One that I'll highlight, you mentioned reducing health disparities. Yeah. One that we're very focused on right now is maternal and child health. And we know that, unfortunately, in Harris County, we have rates of maternal mortality, infant mortality that are higher than in the rest of Texas and indeed in the rest of the nation.
Why is that?
Yeah.
So there's a wide range of causes. There's comorbidities like diabetes that can contribute. So the healthier a population is, the healthier their moms and babies will be. But at the same time, we also know that there's big racial disparities there, and black moms and babies, black moms are dying at 3 times the rate of those of other races.
But
and so,
as Frank mentions, though, why us? There are other communities like us across the globe, across the nation. Why are we in such a bad place there when it comes to that?
Diversity, maybe?
Well, what we're really focused on is fixing it. We just had a maternal and child health conference last month, which is our third annual one. We've added maternal and child health home visiting programs to really work on getting people access to prenatal care. We won a $5 million award from the federal government to implement the Healthy Start program that works with young children. And our WIC program serves about 50,000 participants a year. So we're really focused on trying to support expectant parents and babies across Harris County.
I know this is a challenging time for public health all across the country. I'm curious because, I'm that get vaxxed kind of guy here. What did we learn, do you think, from the COVID-19 situation we went through for a number of years? And how is that impacting vaccination programs and how you get the messages out now? What did you learn from that?
Yeah. I think with COVID, we learned just how important trust is. Mm-hmm. And I hope that Harris County Public Health emerged as a trusted voice during that time. But we also realized that being really open with people about risks, about benefits of vaccination is critical. And simply walking around with a vaccination message without that supporting rationale is really important. And so part of what we have seen post-COVID is we've seen vaccination rates come down a little bit. There were kids who didn't make it to the doctor for their well child visits, and now we are seeing some of the impacts of that in our community. Did
the report look at how trusted Harris County Public Health became? Did it do anything to judge how much we depend or trust the messaging out of there? Because we can see nationwide there's a lot of lack of trust in public health. But was Harris County different? Was that one of the things you looked at?
So our annual report really focuses on the activities within the department of our 14 offices and divisions and what they've been able to accomplish.
So I got my monkeypox vaccine from Harris County.
I did too.
Yes.
Thank you.
Remember there was this sort of, I don't know if it was true or a rumor, that you could be standing next to someone and your elbow could touch their elbow and you could get monkeypox. There was this really explosive information going on. So and they were great. They were just great. So is monkeypox even still around? Is that even still a thing?
It is still around. We are actively vaccinating people against monkeypox, and that was a time when building trust was so important, and we had folks going out to the clubs at 2 a.m. and putting shots in arms. So we still see a few cases coming through, and fortunately not as many as in that moment, but still important.
Just a point of clarity. Now it's called Mpox.
Yes.
We didn't want to disparage those poor monkeys, so it's just Mpox now.
Thank you. So what are the big vaccines recommended these days?
Well, I mean, the CDC has, a recommended vaccine schedule. Yeah.
But what I found interesting about this report is that Harris County Public Health doesn't just release one annual report. You published 8. And within those 8, walk us through why you felt the need to highlight these 8 different reports.
Yeah. So we have a fantastic epidemiology team that analyzes health data, and some of the reports that they released last year focused on specific aspects of health. Chronic disease was a report. Rates of HIV and STIs in Harris County.
Which are on the rise.
They are.
Yes.
Thank you for reading it.
Yes. I did. The report is 60 pages, so just so you know.
They were really on the rise in the Black community for a long time. Is that still the case?
We still see higher rates, yeah. And we published a report on extreme heat, particularly given the storms that we saw last year, the power outages, impacts of extreme heat are very much with us. Report on maternal health, on impacts of air pollution. So kind of a wide range of topics in terms of not only what is impacting our residents, but what are we doing about it and what would we like partners to do about it.
To piggyback on that, equity runs through the whole report. What I want to know is what areas you saw that were persistent inequalities in 2024. So then what for 2025 are you planning to do to help bridge that gap?
Yeah. So I already mentioned the maternal mortality, infant morbidity rates. We also see disparities in cancer. So within that chronic disease report, one of the things that jumps out is very high rates of prostate cancer in Black men. So within all of that chronic disease work, we really want to emphasize early screening and early detection so that people can get good care as soon as possible.
How are you targeting these communities? What's going to be the plan going forward?
So we do extensive mapping to see just what's needed where, and then we have a great Office of Communications, Education, and Engagement that will go out not only with digital campaigns, but on the ground campaigns. We're always at community events. You'll see us around the community, trying to meet people where they are in whatever language they're speaking. So,
to that point, do you vaccinate undocumented people? I mean, is that common, and can anyone go in for a vaccination?
So we vaccinate people who are generally of low income, and we don't ask about citizenship.
And so they shouldn't fear going to get a vaccine and ICE being there.
I can't speak for ICE, but we certainly encourage everybody to get vaccinated. That's important for individuals and the community.
So one of the categories that falls under Harris County Public Health is the Environmental Public Health Division, which this is where all the food inspections are done for restaurants. Leah, we like to consider ourselves a foodie city, and we're very much into the food scene here in Houston. The EPH performed 19,713 food inspections last year. Give me some good news. How did we do?
We actually have a very robust food safety infrastructure. You can
That's
go eat
what
at a
I
restaurant, and it's not only restaurants. It's food trucks, it's nursing home cafeterias, it's anywhere fresh food is sold. If there's ice cream in your convenience store, a food inspector has been there to check it out.
Great.
I want to inspect ice cream.
Yeah, right.
How's
the mosquito control? I got eaten up this weekend.
Mosquitoes is another thing in your report.
Yeah, so mosquito control is one of the services that we offer for all of Harris County. And we do that first by trapping and testing mosquitoes. And then wherever we see mosquito-borne disease, which here is principally West Nile virus, we'll go spray. And so this is not nuisance spraying, sorry. This is really spraying for the purpose of disease prevention.
So, Leah, right now there's clearly a lot of questions around funding. And the fiscal year of 2024, your annual operating budget for the Harris County Public Health was $228 million. 57% of that comes from grant funds. How are we looking as we look into the next couple of years moving forward?
Yeah. So we have one set of funding that we knew was going to roll off, right? So you mentioned COVID earlier. We got quite a lot of COVID recovery funds, and Harris County Commissioner's Court was very forward-thinking and invested that in health and housing and jobs and education and justice and safety. However, many of those funds have a 2026 end date. Of course, we also have other federal funds, and you're watching the news. You are the news, and so federal funding is challenged. So we're watching that very closely.
What do you want people of Harris County to understand when they might be worried about that funding?
I can't reassure them that it won't go away, but what I can reassure them is that Harris County Public Health will be here, protecting health and preventing disease and injury and promoting well-being at whatever level is available to us through our funding.
Last question for me. What should be on our radar that we should come to you guys for? What vaccines do you think right now are most important that people get? What's the best we can do individually to help support our health in this community right now?
Yeah. Of course, we're looking at measles, right? We have a very large measles outbreak in West Texas, and we're lucky that in Harris County we have a pretty good measles vaccination rate, but it can always be better. And because measles is so contagious, it's kind of the canary in the coal mine. And so that's indicating that we may have some cracks in our vaccination rates, and we really want to make sure that people are trusting their pediatrician, getting the right advice, and moving forward with that CDC schedule.
Leah Barton is the Interim Executive Director for Harris County Public Health. Leah, thank you so much for joining us today on Hello Houston.
Thank you for having me.
Coming up on Hello Houston, we'll talk all things Cinco de Mayo as Hello Houston continues.
Yeah.
I want to make a movie about this.
The Arts Hour brings you film,
The themes in it are so far ahead of their time.
books,
The detail is amazing.
art,
There's all the personal stuff.
theatre,
lots of singing and dancing and colours.
music,
The dance floor is made for dancing.
and everything in between.
I want it to be exciting.
That's the Arts Hour with me, Nikki Beatty.
I really identified with it.
From the BBC.
The Arts Hour, Friday nights at 9 on News 88.7.
Tonight on Houston Public Media TV8, an intimate portrayal of three families confronting the unique challenges of Alzheimer's. Independent Lens presents Matter of Mind, My Alzheimer's. Tonight at 9 on TV8 or stream on the PBS app.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners like you and from Houston Community College with AI and robotics training for a real-world education in technology. Sign up information and more at hccs.edu.
Support comes from DePelchin Children's Center. May is National Foster Care Awareness Month, and DePelchin is celebrating the foster parents who ensure that Houston area children are part of safe and loving families. Learn more at depelchin.org. Support comes from Houston Public Works, with information to prevent clogged pipes, backups, and unexpected expenses, like always throwing wipes, even the ones labeled flushable, in the trash, not the toilet. More at protectourpipes.org.
Support comes from Lockton, an independent insurance brokerage firm dedicated to helping businesses and their people reach their goals with strategies for employee engagement, satisfaction, and productivity. More at lockton.com.
Join us for Hello Houston, weekdays from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., taking a deep dive into the stories that matter to Houstonians, keeping you informed, engaged, and entertained, with a generous support from our founding sponsor, John Bradshaw.
And now back to Hello Houston. Join the conversation. Call now 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now here's Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Yes, it was in the script.
Today is Cinco de Mayo. While the celebration is rooted in the Mexican Army's victory over the French at the Battle of Puebla in 1862, today it celebrates in Mexico and America to honor Mexican culture and heritage through parades, mariachi performances, as well as one of the most amazing parts of Mexican culture, the food.
And the drink.
And the drinks.
Which is why I wasn't ready when we came back.
An area restaurant that will surely be celebrating Cinco de Mayo is Molina's Cantina, the oldest family-owned and operated Tex-Mex restaurant in Houston. It opened in 1941. The restaurant started with the goal of sharing the flavors of Tex-Mex in a warm, welcoming space where guests are treated like family. Recently, the Texas Historical Commission recognized the restaurant's enduring 84-year legacy and awarded them with the Texas Treasure Business Award. With us now to tell us more about Molina's Cantina and how they're celebrating Cinco de Mayo, today is Ricardo Molina, co-owner of Molina's Cantina. Ricardo, welcome to Hello Houston.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no, thank you for coming in. And if you are watching us on our YouTube feed, you will see we are celebrating. We have they are mocktails.
They're mocktails.
They taste great.
Salud.
So, yes, we are having our margaritas.
That's perfect.
Yum.
Perfect.
So, to start off with this conversation, before we get into whole Molinas and all of that, in Mexico, May 5th is not as big a holiday as we've made it here in the States. What are we actually recognizing, and why do we love it so much here?
Well, we're celebrating the victory over the French in Puebla. Mm-hmm. And that's about the only place I understand that they do celebrate this event in Mexico. As we do here in America, we create holidays. We need things to celebrate. So we've spun this one around, and honestly, it's had a lot to do with the liquor companies over the years.
But it's a great festive time. You just know Cinco de Mayo, everyone enjoys.
Well, and I would say in Mexico they do, yes, he says this Septiembre, which is Mexico's independence, and that's September 16th.
And you have to be sensitive because you don't want to get out there and make it too much about just liquor, because it really does celebrate Mexico culture, the food, the flavors, just the lifestyle. lifestyle, the Viva la Mexico, I think.
Sure, especially here in Texas. You know, we being on the border, being a border state, we've always had Mexico a huge part of our culture here. But we do celebrate it, and everybody becomes Mexican for a day. That's wonderful.
Yes. But tell us a little bit, you know, you just got this award, the Texas Treasury Business Award. How have you seen Mexican culinary food change and evolve, and Tex-Mex? Speaking more specifically about Tex-Mex, how has it evolved over the years?
You know, our dad's still alive. He's 96. He's doing great.
Congratulations.
Tell him hello. Yeah. He's doing wonderful. He'd be here if I'd let him today.
Is the key to life the margaritas? Is that what kept it going strong?
He came
it's the
to
queso.
Town. He lives in Anderson, Texas, on a little ranch. He came to town to celebrate Cinco de Mayo. And so he'll be after it tonight. But I was asking him last night about some things. And the way it changed, you know, before it was just called Mexican food. And then somewhere in the 70s, I think it was Diane Kennedy, a noted chef and Mexican cook, said, well, that's not Mexican food. And she was saying this, that, and the other about it. And so that's when everybody decided to say, well, wait a minute, we're not Mexican food, we're Tex-Mex. And we always say in our marketing, we're Tex-Mex, and we're proud of it.
Sure.
You know, I tell people this too. We have a lot of times guests will come in, hey, how you doing? Where you been? What are you up to? I say, oh, we just came straight from the airport. And really, where you been? We went to Mexico. It's our comfort food down here.
Yes.
Thank goodness.
So how much Mexican cuisine do you bring into your version of Tex-Mex?
You know, it got into these grilled items. Beforehand, it was really the crispy tacos, enchiladas, tamales, and things like that. And then Ninfa, thank goodness, God bless her. She really got that ball rolling in the early 70s. And now you wouldn't think of having a restaurant, a Mexican restaurant, Tex-Mex, without having fajitas.
Nope.
Yes.
And I can remember in the early 80s when we'd cater parties for companies that were from out of state, and they had a home base here in Texas. They'd bring them here to Houston to train, and we'd set up a buffet lunch for them, and you had to explain to them what was a tamale, and if you had hey, you take the shuck off. Don't do that. They were not familiar with avocados so much, and guacamole. They didn't really know anything. So it was what we grew up with here in Texas is one thing. Across the country, it was not so much at all.
How important do you think it is to share culture and do it through food? Is that the best conduit, do you think, into cultures?
Absolutely, because you see where people are from, and you get to, if you're eating with them, you get to talk and say how it's created and the backgrounds of it. So sure. Absolutely.
You know, I grew up in Birmingham, and until I went to college with a bunch of Texas boys, I didn't know anything about this kind of Mexican culture and the food. And they introduced the Frito pie. Back in 1982. But you don't see the Frito pie on a lot of menus, at least Tex-Mex, but it kind of...
There's a reason.
Oh, that's so good. A good Frito pie.
Ricardo, you mentioned fajitas.
Thank you so much.
I have a question.
Just moving along.
I do love a good Frito pie, Frank. But I will say, I don't want it on the menu at a Mexican restaurant. But I will say, Ricardo, why are fajitas becoming so expensive? It used to be one of those things.
They are very expensive. And I love them.
And I love them.
But I'm also cheap.
I feel like I'm paying hundreds of dollars. I mean,
Sure,
I'm like, this is...
I remember the fajita, which is outside skirt. There's inside and outside. It was in the high $70s a pound. One, it's 35% waste. The outside's the better cut. It's a lot more marbled, but a lot more waste. The inside's tough as a boot. You got to do some things to it. So we serve outside only. So when you get in there, one, you have to have somebody that knows what they're doing to clean it.
Mm-hmm.
You're cleaning, you're throwing 30% of it, 35 into the garbage can right there. Then you have shrinkage. We could sell ribeye cheaper. And it was not for years, I don't think it is still covered by any trade restrictions, which we're talking about trade these days.
Yes.
But they could ship it's just tons of it over, and I understand that Japan and some other countries used that thin meat. It's classified as one of the thin meats in some traditional dishes. So we would send shiploads of it over there, leaving us without here. So you've got 2 skirts per cow, only 2 outside skirts, one on each side. They're only about this long. You know, you're getting a little more than 1 serving per per side. So
Wow.
it's
Can you
just-
switch it up though? Can you use a different cut?
You can. A lot of people do. You look up thin meats and you see what some people say is fajita. It's like selling a ribeye but putting something else in there. So we don't do that.
So what's the secret to really yummy, buttery fajita?
We have to start with a good piece of meat, or else you're fighting nature. You're putting something in it, papain, which is a tenderizer, and different things like that, which we don't do. But
What's your number one seller? What just flies off the menu?
Enchiladas. I'll tell you, cheese enchiladas.
Chicken enchiladas.
Cheese enchiladas. That's the most Tex-Mex, I would say, thing on the menu, right? Like a cheese enchilada with a little bit of that meat sauce.
Or a chicken enchilada with
so hungry.
Suiza sauce.
So
Green
Ricardo,
sauce.
Yeah, the fajitas are big. We still make our gravy. We just use the beef-based gravy.
The gravy.
We boil beef bones to make the base, which bones are difficult to find now. They want to sell you the boats where you cook them for the marrow and all that. We just want a beef bone with a knuckle and all that to boil.
So what's the secret to a good margarita?
Tequila.
The goal, because I've heard different things.
Tequila.
Drinking mocktails.
I know we don't have any tequila in ours.
Drink
but
lemonade.
I've heard, at the end of the day, with a lot of sugar, it doesn't matter about the tequila, but you say it does.
Well, we don't do a lot of sugar deal, and if you look at the back of a lot of these tequila bottles, there's a recipe on there, and that's basically what we do. It's 2 tequilas, 1 triple sec, and 1 lime, and then you got to put a little sugar or something in there to knock the edge off the lime. And we have to put some water in ours, a little bit of water or it won't freeze.
So you know what? If you make them with vodka instead of tequila, that's when they're called Francaritas.
the good old Francarita. So Ricardo, it is Cinco de Mayo.
That's a first.
Yeah. Tequila gives me heartburn, but vodka works.
Cinco de Mayo, do you get to celebrate, or is this just a extremely busy work day for you?
It's a Monday.
It is a Monday.
It's going to be a work day for us, and we enjoy it because we'll go in and see a lot of people. We'll have the mariachis. We have some, happy hour all day and stuff like that. So we'll get to see a lot of fun folks having a good time.
Now, Cinco de Mayo has come under some criticism of a little bit of cultural appropriation. Have you seen that impact your business at all, or do you? No.
No, we ignore that.
Will people dress up and kind of put on a little bit of fiesta wear?
Our staff does, and you're always going to have a ringer in the group. One of your guys, Frank, show up.
Drinking a Francarita. What are you going to do with him?
Ricardo's going to put that on the menu now. You prefer vodka? It's a Francarita.
Is it true you were the first in Houston to offer frozen margaritas?
No.
So
we're one of the first. And Dad, the guy that started doing that was in Dallas. I forget the name of the place. Okay. And Dad, 5 minutes later, he saw that and he found a machine and he put it online. Well, Miss Garbett said that she was. Los Tios, God bless her. I love Miss Garbett. She's no longer with us, but if she says she did it, I'll give her that. We were 5 minutes after.
So right around the same neighborhood. Yeah. Well, this is fun and exciting. If this were our first time to go out and celebrate Cinco de Mayo, of course, get a margarita. But what would you order for the meal?
The left side?
A shot on the side, yeah. I think I'd go with probably some grilled shrimp, a grilled shrimp dish or something. I just had a big breakfast, so I'm thinking a little lighter.
A little on the lighter side.
Yeah, you got to have a lot of sour cream and a lot of guacamole and a lot of cheese, no matter what you order, beef, chicken, or shrimp.
I mean, that is like the ingredients to Tex-Mex food,
I mean,
right?
Pico de Gallo makes the difference, I think. You got to have a good Pico de Mayo. It's got to be just the right
Pico
stuff.
de Mayo.
Pico de Mayo.
We are running out of time, and I so want to know about the Nancy Ames nachos.
Sure.
But we're out of time, I fear.
Well, you want to say about a Frito pie?
Yeah. Quickly, tell me. Nancy Ames. Because I love Nancy.
She had a show here in town, and Dad was on a show like this, and he made some nachos, and Nancy said, I like mine like this, and she put everything on it, and this is how I like to eat mine. And Dad said, okay, fine. We put it on the menu. It's been there ever since. And
so if
she's
Nancy
doing
Ames
great.
can have that, Frank can have his
Francaritos on the way.
Ricardo Molina is the co-owner of Molina's Cantina. Molina. Ricardo, thank you for joining us today on Hello Houston, and happy Cinco de Mayo.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Coming up on Hello Houston, we'll discuss the current state of the U.S. economy with John Diamond, Senior Director of the Center for Tax and Budget Policy at Rice University's Baker Institute. And we'll also talk to Dr. Brian Clement. This is Hello Houston on News 88.7.
Stay tuned. There's more Hello Houston on the way with Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Donations come in many forms: a monthly membership, a one-time gift, and that extra vehicle you no longer need. We take any kind of vehicle in any condition. Learn more at houstonpublicmedia.org/cars. And thank you.
Showers moving into the area. We'll get up to about 81 today. Right now, 78. This is your NPR station, KUHF, Houston, News 88.7, a service of the University of Houston. It's 12 o'clock.
Just ahead on this hour of Hello Houston, we continue diving into the top stories of the day, such as President Trump saying, "I don't know," when asked if he thinks he needs to uphold the Constitution, while also adding that his lawyers are, quote, obviously going to follow what the Supreme Court said. I'm Frank Billingsley.
And I'm Celeste Diaz-Sherman. Then we'll speak with John Diamond, Senior Director of the Center for Tax and Budget Policy at Rice University's Baker Institute, who's going to join us to discuss the new jobs report and tariffs.
And I'm Ernie Manous. Plus, we'll have our first Lightning Roundtable, a quick, comprehensive rundown of all trending topics.
And we want to hear from you, so give us a call at 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. You can also watch us on our YouTube channel. Just go to hellohouston.org and click the big orange banner.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. This is the day the U.S. Department of Education says it will begin collections on defaulted federal student loans. We have more on this from NPR's Corey Turner.
Education Secretary Linda McMahon said late last month that today the Education Department would resume what's known as the Treasury Offset Program. That means the roughly 5 million borrowers who are now in default on their federal student loans and haven't made a payment in at least 270 days could soon see the federal government seize a portion of their tax refunds or Social Security benefits. The department says this summer it will also begin garnishing the wages of borrowers in default. These measures are not unprecedented. They've just been paused for 5 years since the pandemic began. Borrowers can learn more about how to get out of default at studentaid.gov. Corey Turner, NPR News.
President Trump's again leaving people wondering about what he really meant. In his interview with NBC's Meet the Press moderator Kristen Welker, which aired last night, Trump said, "I don't know," when he was asked if everyone on U.S. soil, whatever their status, is entitled to due process. He also said, "I don't know," and deferred to lawyers when Welker asked him if he thinks as president he has to uphold the Constitution. NPR's Asma Khalid looks at Trump's continued use as well of tariffs.
Tariffs are key to the president's economic vision. In fact, just last night on social media, he announced plans for yet another tariff, this time a 100% tariff rate on movies produced outside of the United States. One last thing to note is that this week, Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney is coming to Washington. It is a high-stakes meeting to watch, given Trump's threats of tariffs and, of course, annexation toward the United States' northern neighbor.
NPR's Asma Khalid reporting. Officials in Yemen say at least 15 people were injured in a series of airstrikes in and around the capital, Sana'a. Yemen accuses the U.S. of strikes. The U.S. has not commented. Iranian-backed Houthi rebels say they will continue their campaign to stop air travel in and out of Israel. Here's NPR's Carrie Kahn.
The rebels say they're working to impose, quote, a comprehensive blockade of Israeli airspace. Sunday, the Iranian-backed group fired a missile that landed near Ben Gurion International Airport in Tel Aviv. The projectile set off air raid sirens in most of central Israel and caused light injuries after penetrating air defense systems. The airport closed temporarily and many airlines canceled flights. Iran's foreign ministry posted on social media it was not involved in the attack. Israel's foreign minister vowed to retaliate, quote, sevenfold to the Houthis' strike. The Houthis have targeted U.S. forces in the Red Sea and have routinely shot missiles into Israel in protest of the Gaza war. The U.S. and U.K. have retaliated. Carrie Kahn, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
From Washington, this is NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Gabrielle Dawkins. Houston Mayor John Whitmire will propose his budget for the upcoming fiscal year tomorrow. It will include an increase in pay for Houston police officers as part of a new police contract announced Friday. It's a 5-year deal that promises a 36.5% increase for officers by 2030. Jason Oliver is a community organizer with the Community Safety Budget Coalition here in Houston. He has his doubts on whether the city can afford it.
I'm worried. Budgets are not a both-and scenario. So if we make this choice to put an extra $800 million on top of the $1 billion that we're already spending on policing, and that money has to come from somewhere, and it's going to come from, our youth programming, our health department, our parks.
The contract would cost the city roughly $832 million. Mayor Whitmire says it would help the city retain police officers. Some local communities are getting new mayors after Saturday's election, while incumbents prevailed in others. News 88.7's Gail DeLauder looks at some of the results.
Houston area voters decided on propositions and bond issues, along with school board trustees and city council positions. There were also several mayor's races. That included one in Pasadena that appears headed into a runoff between Rex Lindbergh and Thomas Schoenbein. That's to replace Mayor Jeff Wagner. In Jersey Village, council member James Singleton will become the new mayor after running unopposed to replace Mayor Bobby Warren. West University Mayor Susan Sample also ran unopposed, while City of South Houston Mayor Joe Soto won re-election. Meanwhile, one state lawmaker has filed a bill to get rid of May elections in Texas because of their low turnout. I'm Gail DeLauder, News 88.7.
It's 78 degrees on the UH campus. A chance of showers and thunderstorms are possible after 4 p.m. I'm Gabrielle Dawkins, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance with its Name Your Price tool, a way to see coverage options based on a driver's budget. Learn more at progressive.com or 1-800-PROGRESSIVE. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Live from Houston Public Media and News 88.7, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
And don't forget, the best part of all that is you can watch us live on YouTube.
Yep.
So easy to do. Houston Public Media channel, or just go to our website, hellohouston.org, and you can click the bar and watch what's going on here in the studio. We had a lively first hour. As we head into our second hour, we wrapped the first hour talking about Cinco de Mayo.
That's right. And we had Ricardo Molina from Molina's Cantina in, and Molina's just got the Texas Treasure Business Award. And we had some comments about Cinco de Mayo because it does have a little bit of controversy there. And Candy Torres wrote in, Mexicans don't call it Cinco de Mayo. The holiday is officially recognized as El Día de la Batalla de Puebla, translating to the Day of the Battle of Puebla. Approximately 2,000 Mexican soldiers armed with outdated weapons defeated professional, well-equipped French army of around 6,000 soldiers. Mexico owed money to France under the Emperor Napoleon III. France had much larger ambitions. Puebla was a victory, but the French won the war. Mexico was occupied for 2 years. So there you go. Thank you, Candy.
The more you know.
Candy Torres. We have such smart listeners. And
We
viewers.
do. Also, this last hour, we were talking a lot about posting the 10 Commandments in schools and Donald Trump, President Trump, posting a picture of himself as the Pope. That got a lot of comments. We're still taking your comments. We'll be talking about that a little later in the show. And you can send your comments to talk@hellohouston.org or text them to us at 713-440-8870. Or you can call us, as Elvin has done, and he is on the line right now with us from the 3rd Ward. Elvin, what's on your mind?
Well, hello, guys. First off, great show.
Thanks.
And I wanted to talk about the 10 Commandments.
Mm-hmm.
So adults are passing laws to put the 10 Commandments on the walls of kids when we all know that the real issue here is that the 10 Commandments is for the guilty conscience of adults, not children, who know nothing about adultery, as you guys were talking about, and a lot of these other things, especially being killed in school. So that's one point. And I want to dovetail this with the picture or the meme that the president did of the Pope.
Mm-hmm.
And this is very important because these are actually not jokes. If you look at where we are as a society since 2016, we've essentially joked ourselves all the way into authoritarianism. And the point that I want to make about this is that Donald Trump, with these moves, it is to denigrate the sacred, whether it's the Pope or even due process or the Constitution. It is to demonstrate for his supporters that he can get away with this and to then devise a permission system for his people wherever they are to emulate what the president is doing. And that's all.
Elvin, that's an awful lot. Thank you very much for sharing that. Remember, Elvin called in at 713-440-8870. You can too. We're interested in what you think. Before we move on to the topics, a little update on that weather out there. How's it
It's
looking?
gotten cloudy outside, so that's already starting to move in. So rain by 4, and then tomorrow, almost 100% chance of rain. Some of it's going to be heavy. Generally in Houston, 1 to 3 inches. To the north, 3 to 6. Could cause some street flooding problems, and they happen, as you know, very quickly. So stay weather aware, be careful.
When will the rain start in our area?
It'll start in our area around 4 o'clock today.
Oh, great, for the evening commute.
Yeah, and then it'll go pretty much through the day, off and on tomorrow. Wednesday starts to dry out by afternoon, but there's some chance of rain Thursday and Friday before it really clears for the weekend.
Okay. Coming up also on today's show, we're going to take a look at the new jobs report came out. So what does that mean for just jobs in general, but also in broader for the economy? We'll be finding that out. John Diamond will be back with us from the Baker Institute. But as always, it's a top of an hour, which means it's time for Celeste to start us off with topics.
That's right. President Trump, when asked if he thinks he needs to uphold the Constitution on Meet the Press with Kristen Welker, said, "I don't know," but added that his lawyers are obviously going to follow what the Supreme Court said. The response came after a series of questions regarding the right to due process for people living in the United States and the Fifth Amendment. During this exchange, Trump said he wants to deport millions of undocumented immigrants who he called some of the worst people on earth. During the wide-ranging interview with NBC News, Trump also ruled out running for a third term, which the Constitution prohibits. When asked about his successor, Trump complimented both Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Are you concerned your president is not sure if he must uphold the Constitution? I say you're our president.
He was playing the Texas two-step.
Give us a call, 713-440-8870.
Yeah, I mean, this whole, I don't know, but, you know, my lawyers know. I don't know, my lawyers know. And it all came back to facilitate the return of Garcia from El Salvador. Mm-hmm. And I listened to the I listened to the whole hour, and Kristen said, you know, don't you think that you are causing a constitutional crisis by not doing this? You know, shouldn't you uphold the Constitution? I don't know.
Yeah, I just see
I have
his
lawyers for that.
Yeah, I see his I don't know as just a dismissive move on kind of thing. You know, I don't know. You know, don't ask me about this.
He doesn't answer what he doesn't want to answer.
Right. Right. The old saying is, say what you came to say, no matter what they ask you. And he does a lot of that, you know. I'm still caught up with the whole thing of the MS-13 tattoos on the guy's hand, which are so obviously just put in there as indicator numbers so you can see what they're talking about of his tattoos. And his insistent argument, no, those are real tattoos. If you saw that interview he did, it's just it's bothersome that you cannot ask many cases elected officials solid questions and just have them answer honestly. That's the part that bothers me. Yes, of course, their answers often bother me, but the fact that we're in a time now where they don't have to answer.
I hope this deflection is maybe setting the stage for Pam Bondi to say, okay, the Supreme Court said we're going to facilitate this, so we're going to do that. It's not about Donald Trump having to recant what he said. We're leaving him out of this decision. It's a decision of the Supreme Court and the Attorney General to bring back Brego for due process.
I do think, though, to your point, Ernie, that they do have to answer. Donald Trump, as the president, was on Meet the Press. He was not just doing, Fox News, but he was sitting there being asked journalist fair questions, and he answered them. Now, he might not have answered them in the way that we want, but clearly he is, to a certain extent, we are still asking those hard questions.
ABC News also.
Right. But he's not choosing to answer them. He sits there. He comes with what he came to perform. And he continues to share that same performance no matter what they ask. When they ask hard questions, he gives an answer. I don't know. What are you supposed to do with that? You're the president of the United States. You should be able to formulate an answer to that question. Are you doing this or are you not? I don't know. My lawyers
It's
have to decide.
I know, and I'm not the president.
Right.
Yes, you're
That's
supposed to
where
do
I
what the
have the
Supreme
problem.
Court says to do, especially when it's a 9-0 vote.
Yeah.
But he did say, he said his lawyers are obviously going to follow what the Supreme Court said.
When exactly? Because they haven't yet.
So to me, I do think that we still have a president who will sit and take an interview like everybody else.
I would
it
agree
to
with
certain
that
accountability.
if it wasn't for the fact that he's limiting who's in the White House press corps, too. Who's allowed in, who he's taking questions from, who he likes to take questions from. That's bothersome to me, too.
But these interviews also come on the tail of some very low approval ratings, like
Correct.
the lowest in history.
I do think that there are still certain standards that we can't throw out the baby with the bathwater. I mean, there are still certain standards that our president has to withhold, and one of those is sitting with him.
Especially when he's
still
getting
want to
bad
be in your
approval
corner.
ratings.
Yeah. I think he's seeing that it's not all peaches and sunshine. But the interesting with the approval numbers, that is across the board. We talked about this on the phone. The people, or on the show before, the people that voted for him of his base has remained relatively the same support.
Well, the thing is, you use the word performance, and it's one of those things where I think that if he was going on there and, saying all these things and then not doing what he said, then it would be a performance. But the thing we see with Donald Trump is his supporters feel like he is that disruptor that the United States of America needed. And what he is doing, I think across the board, we can all agree, is disruptive.
Yes, he is disrupting.
You got that right.
And he's the disruptor in chief, and his people love that moniker for him.
Yeah.
So we're going to jump back into the 10 Commandments for a minute here because we don't like to make you hang on the line too long at 713-440-8870. So Nora's with us right now. She's calling from Inside the Loop. Nora, what's on your mind?
Well, I wanted to say that historically it is not correct to say that Ten Commandments was part of our founding documents and our founding ideas. Mm-hmm. Because although the Huguenots, the Pilgrims came in the 17th century for religious persecution, and they had religious ideas, by the time 1776, and then later after the Congressional Congress and by 1792, when states were being given permission to join the United States of America, they absolutely had to remove from the state constitution any mention of religion. Mm-hmm. And what the Constitutional Congress had remembered were the terrible hundreds of years of wars in Europe over religion.
Nora, thank you very much for that. We appreciate your thoughts. And I always like to learn from our listeners.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I learn a lot from them. 713-440-8870. Larry's on the line from Katy, also with opinions on the Ten Commandments. Larry, go.
Yeah, hi. I want to just endorse what was just the state religions of most European countries in the 18th century took over, and they still are. The United Kingdom, the Anglican Church is still the state religion of Great Britain. So the First Amendment and the separation of church and state was written into our Bill of Rights in opposition to that. There's no end of a subdivision of faith when it comes to people, so there's no end of the disagreement that's going to come along. More people have died in the name of religion overall in history than any other reason, and it's just another step towards Christian nationalism as I see it.
Larry, thank you for those comments, too. Once again, the number here is 713-440-887. You can call us, or now you can also text us at that number, or keep the emails coming in at talk@hellohouston.org or in the chat on YouTube. And a little later in the hour, we're going to revisit this topic and some of your comments. So if you have something else to say and share with us, please take an opportunity to do it right now. Okay, let's see. Should I go on to this story? Oh, my story's been bumped again in honor of Frank's story. Eventually, I'm going to get to my story. I'm holding on to it.
That's an interesting one.
It's coming up. Frank, it's up to you. Take us into the next one.
Well, Houston is still the top moving destination in the United States. That's according to Penske Truck Rental, which annually creates a list of the top 10 moving destinations based on its highest number of one-way customer truck rentals. It seems logical.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for the fourth consecutive year, Houston ranks number one on the latest list compiled from 2024 data. Reasons for moving to Houston? The margaritas.
No, I don't see that on the list.
Okay. Closer proximity to loved ones. That's 28%. Better job opportunities. 27%. A lower cost of living. 23%, and a need for more space, 23%. I still say margaritas are on the list somewhere.
I'm sure.
Well, that's what you love about living in Houston, and we want to hear why you love living in Houston. Give us a call, 713-440-8870.
I do love, I'm at the age now where I start talking to friends about, are you going to retire in Houston or looking somewhere else, Palm Springs or Fort Lauderdale or whatever. And it sort of comes back to two great airports in the middle of the country. You can fly anywhere in 3 to 4 hours. Great medical center, clearly. Tons of food scene, tons of art scene. Every sports team you could ever want, and every artist you could ever want.
Yeah.
Whether it's ballet or opera or theater or symphony, we've got it all.
And the thing is, to me, when you say all those things, we have parking.
We do have parking.
That's a big one. When you move to other big cities, the parking is
some people would
insane.
disagree that we have parking. For someone who lives downtown, I hear it from my friends all the time.
But for the most part, when you go to restaurants and stuff.
But I will say this. I will retire and I will stay in Houston.
Why?
Because I don't want to pack. I have so much stuff in my townhouse. When I was renting the place I bought. And one of the reasons I bought where I was, I don't have to pack any of this. Think how much I'm going to save if I just buy this place. And that's why I stayed. So laziness, once again, is my guiding star. That's my North Star.
As somebody
why do you love Houston? You're from the Valley, right?
I'm from South Texas, but, when I got married and we moved up to Houston, we lived in Austin. Dan went to grad school at UT. And so we lived in Austin, and then we lived in Australia. We lived in Perth, Western Australia. Then we were in San Ramon, right outside of California, right outside of San Francisco. So I've lived in the last 10 years in a few different places. And what always sticks out to me with Houston is exactly what you listed, all those things. But it goes back to truly people are nice here. We are spicy and we're vivacious. But the fact of the matter is there's just something about Houstonians that we like hustle. We like to play hard. We like to, work hard. There's just something culturally that is grounding here in Houston.
Still
that
a little Wild West-y.
That I love. Yeah. I love it.
As I often say, when I die, just seal up my townhouse, and that will be my monument and my grave.
And that's what we're going to do, Artie.
That's
You'll
what
be
I
glad
want.
to know.
But
we've already talked about that.
We
have you covered.
Wait till I'm dead first before you seal me in.
There's
there.
that.
We're always interested in what you think on all of today's topics. 713-440-8870. Before we wrap up this segment, we're going to grab another call quickly from Ann from Humble. Ann, what's on your mind?
I have two quick comments. One, the president, A, does not represent everybody in this country, and B, demonstrates his contempt for our Constitution on a regular basis. And as far as the Ten Commandments go, putting them in the classroom only emphasizes hypocrisy practiced in this state and in this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann.
Thank you for your calls.
Coming up on Hello Houston, we'll talk with Senior Director of the Center for Tax and Budget Policy at Rice University's Baker Institute, John Diamond, about the new jobs report and more. And we're also taking your calls on any of today's topics at 713-440-8870. This is Hello Houston on News 88.7.
Did you know 80% of our funding comes from listeners like you, right here in Houston? That's why your support is so important. When you give to Houston Public Media, you're investing in trusted news and educational programming that millions depend on daily. Every dollar you give makes a difference, ensuring this public service stays strong for everyone in our community. Help us support this mission. Give today at houstonpublicmedia.org or call 888-909-0887.
Support comes from Signify Business Cash by Wells Fargo. With this business credit card, cardholders can earn rewards on business purchases with no caps or categories to track. Learn more at wellsfargo.com/signify. Terms apply. Support for Houston Public Media comes from Baylor College of Medicine. At the heart of the Texas Medical Center, Baylor physicians and scientists continue to shape healthcare for Houston and beyond through education, research, and innovation.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Mammoth Live, bringing X and Los Lobos, 99 years of rock and roll, to Sugarland's Smart Financial Center on Saturday, November 22nd. More information at smartfinancialcenter.net.
Support comes from GiveMeTheVIN.com. Purchasing vehicles in minutes with the VIN or license plate, or by bringing the vehicle to Houston area offices. Details at GiveMeTheVIN.com. Support comes from Downtown Houston Plus, with new businesses like Tenfold Coffee Company, Meow Wolf, Barbacana, Punchline Comedy Club, and Bubble Boba. Details at downtownhouston.org. Houston Public Media is a service of the University of Houston and is supported with your gifts to the Houston Public Media Foundation. More information available online at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
And now back to Hello Houston. To share your thoughts on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
In the month of April, U.S. employers added 177,000 jobs, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics monthly jobs report. The unemployment rate remained unchanged at 4.2%. Despite these strong employment numbers, fears of a recession continue to loom over us. President Trump's economic policies have upended countless industries, and his flip-flopping on tariffs have disrupted global trade. Are we headed toward a recession? What does the job report tell us about the state of our economy? To tell us more is John Diamond, the Edward A. and Hermina Hancock Kelly Senior Fellow in Public Finance and Senior Director of the Center for Tax and Budget Policy at Rice University's Baker Institute. John, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack in this, but do these numbers tell us that we're in a great place as we have been told since the report came out?
No. Very clearly. You know, every day we get more data, and every day it points in a different direction. 2 days before that, the GDP report was negative, and, you know, GDP was down and prices were up, which was the worst possible combination. And so 2 days later, we get a positive employment report. But, you know, when was that taken? They did the survey for that report April 6th, I think. That was 4 days after Liberation Day. And it covers the period from January 1 through March 31. So we don't expect to see any real job losses in that number because of the tariffs.
Let me ask that 177,000. It sits out there as sounding like a large number. Is it a good growth in jobs? Where did it fit in what we were seeing in the trends? And is that a good number just to start with?
It's a solid number. It's not. It doesn't say that the economy's like just booming. It's solid. But if you break that number apart, there were several things that make you question. One, all of the job growth was in services. So 156,000 of the 177,000 were service jobs. Only 11,000 were in jobs that would be affected mainly by tariffs, so in the goods-producing industries. Those went up 11,000. All 11,000 were in construction. Other than that, there was nothing. The report basically said services and healthcare are doing great. Government jobs went up by about 10K, and everything else was flat.
So I keep hearing this is Biden's economy, not the Trump economy. But back when it was good, it was the Trump economy, not the Biden economy. Could you break that down for me? And I also have another question. Everyone I'm listening to in the government saying, give us 3 more months, and then we'll know something, good or bad. So first of all, whose economy is it?
Well, it's a hard question to answer, but I think Trump summed it up. I saw him in an interview. He said, if it's good news, it's my economy.
Okay.
If it's bad news, it's Biden's economy.
So Trump answered your own question.
Ernie and I work like that.
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly right. Also, President Trump was on Meet the Press. I believe this is what we're talking about over the weekend to discuss his first 100 days as president, a second term. When asked about tariffs, he said, quote, "The tariffs have just started kicking in, and we're doing really well. Psychologically, I mean. The fake news was giving me such press on the tariffs. The tariffs are going to make us rich."
And that's along with what I was saying.
Yep.
In 3 months, we're really going to know good or bad.
Are we going to be rich? These tariffs.
He called this the golden age, and I think what he meant was buy gold. Because that's the only way you're going to get rich, I think. He made another statement also, and he said, before these tariffs, China was ripping us off. They were taking $162 billion a year, and now we're not doing any business with China, and so we've got all of that back, which just kind of shows you the logic. So, are tariffs going to make us rich? Absolutely not. We have 75 years of evidence that trade makes you rich.
My bigger concern is there any trust in what the president says? And I say that because we talk about his comments, we talk about what he says. Oftentimes we'll laugh at his characterization of things because we know the facts don't support it. Globally, can people follow what our leader of this country is saying when it comes to deciding how to do business? Or is this lack of truthfulness hurting us in that realm?
That's a hard one. I mean, I don't think you can follow him because you can't make sense of it. So just this weekend,
it's all over.
Yeah, we put 100% tariffs on foreign movies because we're tired of getting ripped off by foreign movie producers. Yet we have a trade surplus in movies. We produce $22 billion in movies, and we only import $7 billion. So we have a $15 billion surplus. That should be one of the places we're winning, but all of a sudden it's one of the places we're getting ripped off. I don't know how you make sense of that.
Right.
I have a friend who said, if you really want to make a difference, put tariffs on jobs that are coming into this country. Jobs, the work. In other words, if all of these things, whatever they are being made by India, then tariff those things that are coming so that they will then be made in America. Not necessarily building factories and hiring people, but the stuff that is being made there by people, our jobs are still leaving to go offshore. And the only way to make that happen in reverse is to tariff the jobs coming back.
I'll make 2 points. I actually made this on a podcast recently, which is, we just talked about the employment report.
Right.
Unemployment's 4.2%. Who's going to make all these goods? We're pretty much fully employed. We don't have a lot of
the people we are
rank.
deporting are going to do all this.
So yes, we bring some jobs back. People take those jobs, but those are just people coming out of other employment. So maybe it's possible that we're rich enough we can't make everything. And then if we go to the GDP report, if you look at, let's say growth was 2.5%, and you imported 160 billion in goods, that's great. I mean, you've got 2.5% growth, and you got 160 billion in consumption. Compare that to a report with 2.5% growth and no imports. Same growth, but in one case you get an extra 160 billion in consumption, and the other you don't. Which way are you better off? I would say you're always better off with more consumption.
Well, speaking of which, John, Ernie and I interviewed you leading up to the presidential election during one of our special election shows, and we asked about tariffs because President Trump talked about tariffs during his campaign. Here we are. He is now the president, and he has done what he has said he was going to do. As an economist, is this tariff war, per se, playing out the way you all thought it would be? Now that we have him in office 100 days, is it about what y'all thought whenever he was talking about during his campaign?
Not even close. It's nothing of what I thought. Like, I could have seen, okay, China, yes. Are they ripping us off? Yes. Do they steal IP? Yes. Do they subsidize industries and try to influence industrial production in other parts of the world? Absolutely. So we should have worked with our closest trading partners and the rest of the world to combat that. Mm-hmm. And there are many tools we could have used to combat that other than the T word. We could have subsidized our own industries. We could put, we could get with our trading partners and make sure that we have industrial production policies. That would have made more sense to have like a world against China. But when you start off with tariffing Mexico and Canada and Japan and Vietnam at ridiculous rates.
Well, the whole NAFTA was working, wasn't it?
It was his deal.
Right.
It was working very well. And if there were problems with it, it's going to be renegotiated in 2026. So if you had negotiated a bad deal, which by putting on the tariffs, he basically admitted that he did that, then all you had to do was wait a year and you can negotiate a new, better deal. You don't really need all these tariffs in the meantime to do that.
So you talk in big numbers, like billions of dollars and lots of people. I've seen these reports of like the guy that makes dog collars or sells them made in China. They've gone from $25 to $100. He's like, I can't afford this. I'm going to go out of business. Bring it down for me to the small business owner and the consumer that goes out there, and what's going to change for me?
So so you're right. Small businesses are going to get hurt the worst. And I think one of the main problems with tariffs is they're not economic policy. They're political policy. And so who's going to get exemptions from the tariffs? The big guys. Apple, they got one right off the bat. But if you own a small firm that you spent your life savings to create a firm that has, $1 million in revenue per year, and you're importing something from China, you're toast. I mean, you're done. And so the small people are going to get hurt. The big businesses will win. As far as consumers, low-income consumers are going to get hit harder than any other consumer.
Well, and aren't small businesses the backbone of the country?
They are responsible for the lion's share of the employment of the country.
So that's where this recession is going to happen. It's going to happen in small businesses.
Yeah. And my projection is if we got off of all the tariffs now, we could probably still avoid a recession. If we continue on this road of maximum uncertainty, a recession will kick in, sometime later this year, quarter 3, quarter 4.
We are talking with John Diamond from Rice University's Baker Institute about the economy, the jobs numbers, the tariffs, all that fun stuff. We'd like to know what you want to ask him. Give us a call, 713-440-8870. In a most basic, simple way, as I understand the idea behind the tariffs as the president has unfolded them is, we've been buying all of these products from other countries. If you put a tariff on, the price will go up on those items. So we won't buy theirs anymore. Instead, we'll buy the cheaper U.S. made, and that's how it helps our economy. My concern is we can't make cheaper than they make. We have been spoiled by these inexpensive items that will never be reflected in U.S. manufacturing. So am I right in what they are presenting as the plan? Is that what was sold to the American people, and that the reality behind it doesn't work?
the economics doesn't work. If you just take cars, you can produce a laborer in Mexico makes $6 to $10 an hour. A production worker in the U.S. makes $70 per hour. How are you going to produce a cheaper car in America?
Where's my flat screen TV for $300?
Not going to happen.
Not. I mean, almost everything at Costco is going to double, if not triple.
Except for all the things that get exemptions for the big companies.
Yeah.
So, and we see the exemptions piling up daily.
The other point that is often made is he's the disruptor in chief. And by throwing these out there, he got everybody talking, everybody's scared, and they're all coming to the U.S. to make deals. Where does the reality lie in that? And maybe you don't like the way the sausage is being made, but at the end, if the sausage tastes good, it was worth it.
So, there's some truth to that. By being completely kind of just unpredictable.
Unpredictable.
People will say, well, we can't predict him, so we're just going to make a deal. And this isn't, we feel like we just have to make a deal. And so maybe he's going to get that. My counter argument to that would be, we started in a world in which the best deal we could make wasn't much better than the deal we were getting. I mean, tariffs were pretty low, except for, so again, China, there were some problems there. But as far as Vietnam, maybe, there was some the EU had some tariffs on cars. We could have worked on that. But for the most part, from Canada and Mexico, tariffs were really low because we had a trade agreement.
Well, and the dollar, I remember when the euro not so long ago was almost 1-to-1. And now the euro is more like 87, 88.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty. So, yes, does uncertainty help make a trade deal? Yes. Does uncertainty hurt on another side of the equation? Yes, because now people are like, we used to completely trust the dollar and U.S. Treasury bonds as the safest place to store cash. But maybe that's not the best place. Maybe we're going to reallocate across a basket of currencies.
We're speaking with economist John Diamond from the Baker Institute, and we welcome you to join the conversation at 713-440-8870. We have a call from Joe from Memorial. Hi, Joe. Welcome to Hello Houston.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
Doing well. What is your comment or question for John?
My question is, as an economist, the CHIPS Act, which potentially is bringing semiconductor manufacturing back to the U.S., is that a good thing? And if that is a good thing, what about other possibilities? For example, I know that in the auto manufacturing, most of the engines come in from other countries. Certainly the Germans all provide the engines. What about a program that would bring the technology of engine manufacturing back to the U.S., which is potentially a better paying job than working at McDonald's for all those poor folks in the Midwest that got put out of jobs? But anyway, or if not that, something other like that, rather than, hoping tariffs will magically bring this back.
Joe, thank you.
Yeah, great question. The tariffs, the CHIPS Act is a great act. So, look, tariffs have a role. So if there's some industry that is important to national security, like chips, we should definitely be doing something to produce more chips. And the CHIPS Act, although it did it in a relatively inefficient way because it was just there weren't enough structure to the act, it subsidized chips industry to come back to the U.S. And that was a great thing. We need more of that. Now, even within that, it's always more complicated because if we're going to produce chips here, we still need stuff from abroad to produce those chips. And we get a lot of the components of chips from South Korea. So that's why I say, if you really want, industry had been coming back to America. And the problem with just bringing industry back is, we want those jobs and they could be great jobs, but we haven't lost all of our jobs due to trade. So about 50% of job loss since 1980 has been due to innovation and robots and using capital instead of labor. And so we're not going to get that's not going to go back to 1980. We can go somewhere down the road. And I'm all for, especially like in manufacturing an engine, that could be an important national defense, capability. And so we need that, and just like maybe shipbuilding's also important. And so, yeah, we should subsidize that. We should make sure we have those capabilities to the extent they provide high-paying American jobs. That's even better.
713-440-8870. Bobby is on the line from Houston. Bobby, what's on your mind?
Well, in the first place, the first time I heard Trump speak, I recognized him as a proto-dictator, and that's what he is, has always been. He does not understand government. He does not know how government works. He doesn't know how economics work. He is just a dictator, and he wants to destroy. He does not want to build anything. And anybody who would vote for him is just politically and socially an ignorant person.
Bobby, I'm going to cut you there. We don't like to name call. We'll let you give your opinion, but we can't call people names here. But we appreciate the call, 713-440-8870. Let me ask on what Bobby was asking. Ultimately, does it matter if the president fully understands all of the trade agreements and all that, but that it's important he have someone supporting him who does? And if that is the case, does this president have someone who fully understands it below him?
No, it's not important that they understand every detail. In fact, I don't think most presidents have. I think they come in, they're usually really, really good persons, and they can reach out to people, and what they need to be able to do is to listen to their advisors and make good decisions based on the evidence provided to them. Now, does Trump have good advisors? I would say about half and half. I think there's kind of on one side, I'm not a big fan of Navarro or Steve Moran, who are a trade advisor and the chairman of the economic advisors. On the other side, I think Besant has been a good kind of counterweight. I know Kevin Hassett personally. I feel like he's always been a guy that would favor free trade, although I've heard some comments that have made me doubt that. So, I think he has some advisors, but at the end of the day, it's who you got to pick who to listen to, and then you got to implement.
Mm-hmm. We have another call, John. This is from Diane in Southwest Houston. Hi, Diane. Welcome to Hello Houston.
Thank you. We're comparing apples and oranges. Products that are made here in the U.S. are based on our laws and our labor minimum wage, which is pathetic. Things made in China are made at a lot lower rate. They subsidize the people that are even doing the work. Even if we brought it back here to the U.S., our people can't live on our minimum wage, never mind the Chinese minimum wage.
True.
That's right. I mean, and that's why you'll never be able to produce goods in America as cheap as they can be produced in China. And in economics, we have a term for that. It's called comparative advantage. There are certain goods we have the advantage at producing. There are certain goods they have the advantage of producing, and we should be trading those goods. Let them produce one good, and then we produce a good, and we trade for the goods that we want to get.
What is your thought on cryptocurrency? I'm very confused by it, and quite frankly, it scares me.
I mean, it's a hard thing. Like, what is it? Like,
right.
what underlies it? But there is, so there's a demand and a supply for it. So it's just like any other market. At the end of the day, there are people that demand it. There is a usefulness to it in the sense that, now the usefulness may be
overtaking the dollar.
Yeah.
So what then? Do we wake up one morning and everyone who has dollars is broke?
No, it's privacy. There will always be some relationship, just like there's a relationship between the German mark and the U.S. dollar. There's always going to be now some relationship, say, between Bitcoin and the dollar. But Bitcoin's not backed by anything. It's just supply and demand.
It's confidence.
We are talking with John Diamond from Rice University Baker Institute on all things, it seems, economics right now. We're going as our country continues forward. The number here, 713-440-8870. Roberto is on the line from the Museum District. Roberto, what's your question or comment?
Yeah, thank you, Ernie. I'm so glad, John, you're on. I'm an investor, and I like to talk about a tree, then I like to talk about the forest. The tree is Houston, Texas. Houston has a huge deficit, $330 million. You're going to try to get a bond for that. I don't know where the interest rates are going to be going for that. And then the fourth, U.S. Treasuries. What do you think is going to happen to U.S. Treasuries? Of course, you can't predict the future, but what, in your professional, informed opinion, do you think they're going? Interest rates going up? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Gregory.
Yeah, that is a really hard question. So, yeah, Houston has some problems on the budget front, and they're going to have to tighten their belt and find a way to equivalize or equalize revenues and expenditures. And hopefully with the report that came out earlier this year, we can cut back government, make it more efficient, and then look at a way to get some more revenues to have a structurally sound budget. As far as U.S. Treasuries, boy, we've seen everything since April 2nd. We've seen a spike up to 4.5%, and then it spiked back down to 4.1%, and then it started going back up. I think there's a lot of questions about do you want to place your trust in U.S. assets? And I do think that's going to hurt us. I think if we could get back to stable policy, our best path forward is to continue to have the reserve currency. That gives you the ability to borrow at a lower rate because everybody wants your currency, and so there's always a demand for your currency. And so, when you're selling bonds, you don't have to raise interest rates until no one wants to buy them. And it looks like we're going to want to be selling a whole lot of bonds for the next few years. So we need a lot of people to want to buy them.
I thanked Roberto by calling him Gregory, and that was probably a hint to Gregory. He was up next or scared him a little. Gregory, you are now on the line from Sugar Land.
Yeah, I'm still here. Hey, I heard an NPR story, I guess it was last week or something, about Customs not having a software program upgrade to collect all this money from these tariffs and things.
Yeah.
And when that happens, if they can keep up with that daily changing of that thing, there's going to be a great big humongous pile of money. So who gets to tap that money? Where's it go?
The money from the tariffs goes to Treasury. So when goods are shipped over, once they're off the ship and put on U.S. soil, unless they're put in a bonded warehouse, they are immediately assessed the tariff, and whoever is the importer of record has to pay that tariff within 10 days. That money goes straight to the U.S. Treasury Department.
Do we know what that's earmarked for, or is it just general?
It's general
funds
budget.
coming in?
It comes in.
Interesting. Did you see that DHL is no longer shipping into America for anything that costs over $800? Did you see that?
Yeah, that would have been related. So it used to be that there was a de minimis amount. So if you shipped 700 in, you would avoid all tariffs. And that was Temu, and all these places were based on that. And that actually went away, I think, last week.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that's all going to stop. That's going to hit prices for goods that are, low value goods.
Yeah, and there are a lot of those.
There's a lot of those you buy every day. You just don't realize it.
And everything out of Mexico, if it's going to get to America, comes through DHL.
Yeah, and if you look at the shipping data, it's fallen off a cliff. I mean, shipments from overseas have fallen by 30, 40, 50%. If you run this forward, assuming there are no trade deals and the tariffs remain in place, if this keeps going, the shelves at stores will be a lot thinner in 2 to 3 months than they are now.
That's the part that people, I think, are missing here. Is you keep hearing all this talk of it, and you look at your stores, you say, I don't know what they're complaining about. Right. There is this lag effect when it's actually going to hit. So you're saying how many weeks, roughly?
I'm going to say it's probably 2 months away, because you have, so shipments take, like from China, it probably takes a month for something to get here. But remember, if you looked at the GDP report, the reason it was negative is because the trade deficit grew to a historically large number, because all of these firms imported goods and have stuck them in warehousing. The other place you saw a big employment increase was in warehousing, because there's been this front running of the tariffs. Let's import as much as we can. Let's stick it in a warehouse so that we have it, and hopefully they will get a deal before we run out of stuff. I would say they're going to run out of that stuff somewhere mid-July, maybe August.
I'd heard somewhere Temu said that their prices are not going to change during these tariffs. How can a company make a statement like that? What would be the economic source to maintain the lower prices?
So you can, the importer could, so if Temu is making profits and the source on the other side was making profits, they could eat it for a while. And I think that could easily happen for a month or two. Again, the longer the tariffs are in place, I wouldn't expect Temu to keep that up for 6 months, but they could definitely do it for 2 or 3.
But they know this, right? I mean, you know it, and we know. I mean, somebody in the federal government has got to say to Trump or whomever, hey, look, we're playing with fire here, and we've got to make a decision, and we've got to make it soon because of what you just said.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think they are. I think the Secretary of the Treasury, Bessent, is constantly saying that. I mean, when I listen to him and hear his words, I hear someone that's worried about 2 months from now, and he's trying to speak some calmness into the markets by saying trade deals are coming. We're having lots of positive talks. Unfortunately, he can't give us any specifics because we don't have them yet.
713-440-8870. We're going to shift a little bit. Elvin is calling in from the 3rd Ward with a question for you. Elvin, what's on your mind?
I wanted to make the point about cryptocurrency. This is never actually brought up on the subject. Cryptocurrency is more than just simply a speculative item. Although a lot of people make money and lose money doing that, the real promise of cryptocurrency, for which we never really get to because there's these scandals that pop up, is the smart contract dynamic of cryptocurrency, where you're literally actually able to program money or program tokenization that then allows us to actually do things like if you do this task successfully, then the cryptocurrency would then actually, the smart contract would interact with you and then give you a certain amount of tokens, et cetera, to actually do things in a utility type fashion. And so I just wanted to simply say that. And then lastly, as it relates to bonds, I wonder what's going to happen. And is it even possible that we might find ourselves accidentally getting into a financial crisis with bonds where Donald Trump says something that causes the Japanese or someone else to pull the trigger on selling their bonds, for which the Japanese mentioned, the finance minister mentioned last week, that they do have that nuclear option?
Yep.
Elvin, thank you very much for that.
On your crypto point, you're exactly right. There are financial incentives and benefits to cryptocurrency. My point was just that, behind cryptocurrency is just a supply and demand framework. How many people want it and how many people, what's the supply, and that creates the value. But that's the same as for a stock of, say, GE. I mean, ultimately that stock's only going to be worth if people want something.
Before we go to his bond issue, I'm just curious, if you were to crash the U.S. economy and the U.S. dollar were to tank, could a crypto replace it? Could there be a bigger play going on here or no?
Not right now. Nothing can replace the U.S. dollar right now. And that's the real, even so if you look at what, at least for the short term, the next few 5, 10, even 15 years, there's just very few things that have the components the dollar does, the rule of law behind it, amazing liquidity all across the world, and people that trust it.
Let's get to that bond question.
The bond question is fascinating. We almost, so can he crash it? Absolutely. We almost did. Liberation Day was April 2nd. If you look at the metrics of bonds on the night of April the 8th, the bond market was in a complete meltdown. If you look at, normally one of the components of liquidity is you look at a swap but between a Federal Reserve, a short-term rate, and a swap between a bond rate, and those had skyrocketed they'd skyrocketed, and it was an indication that liquidity in the market was drying up. So we came very close, and that's why on April 9th we abandoned all of the tariffs and went to something much smaller because the bond market was in chaos. So can it happen? It can absolutely happen. I think right now, from all the metrics I look at, the bond market looks to be doing okay, but it's definitely something people are watching every day.
We do militarily protect Japan.
Correct. And if Japan or someone like that wanted to do that, they could. The silver lining is that it's going to hurt them just as much as it hurts us. So I don't think that's going to be the play we see. Although, on a big level, small level, I think we're actually seeing a little bit of that.
John Diamond is the Edward A. and Hermina Hancock Kelly Senior Fellow in Public Finance and the Senior Director of the Center for Tax and Budget Policy at Rice University's Baker Institute. John, thank you so much for joining us today on Hello Houston.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, John.
Coming up, we'll
We're
talk
done.
more.
No, we're done.
We're done. 12:58. We're done.
We kept John so long. We
kept
blew
John.
through our next
Thank you so
segment.
much for joining us today on Hello Houston. We will be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. See you then. Stay tuned for more right here on News 88.7.
Thanks for listening to Hello Houston. Join us every Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. to talk all things Houston. The Hello Houston production team includes Garrett Bowman, William Menjivar, Jen Altai, Todd Holslander, and Jim Kovacic. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Hi, I'm Craig Cohen, the host of Houston Matters. Join me weekday mornings at 9 or at your leisure on your podcast feed for your daily guide to the people, places, issues, and ideas that define Greater Houston. From politics to the economy, energy to the environment,